What are you tapping me for?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Janice, and on behalf of Maccabi GB, I'd like to welcome you all to our first virtual Jewish walking tour, which, as you know, today is in Florence. Before we start, there are a few house rules I need to go through with you. Firstly, we recommend you have Zoom on speaker view. We will be muting you all for the tour. However, if you have any questions whilst Giovanna is talking, please put them in the chat box. And at the end of the session, we'll take your questions for her via the chat box to answer. If you have any problems during the tour with your hearing or viewing, again, put them in the put your message in the chat box, and we will do our best to help you. We will also be recording the session as well. And I'd now like to hand over to Natan Servi, Head of Education at Maccabi GB.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to spotlight myself, and then I will spotlight somebody else in a second. It is a real pleasure to have over 75 people attending this first virtual walking tour of European cities run by Maccabi GB. Our mission is to support the long-term future of British Jewry by engaging and developing the entire Jewish community within a broad range of sporting, educational, social, and health and well-being activities, whilst promoting Jewish identity and the centrality of Israel. And it is not by chance that we decided to organize this series of virtual tours, taking inspiration from the walking tours of London that Janice and Ian has run for over 2 years to this point. The history of the Maccabi movement is ingrained in that of European Jewry. Starting in Constantinople in 1898, Maccabi clubs developed throughout Europe during the 20th century, becoming an essential fiber of large and small communities where Jewish people fought against discrimination and created a Maccabi club to take part in all types of sporting activities. Over the years, Maccabi GB have visited many communities through our international events and training programs, from Vienna to Berlin to Budapest in the last European Maccabi Games. And during these trips, we explored the history, culture, and tradition of local Jewish communities, creating a connection between our British participants and our fellow Jews from across Europe. And it is not by chance that this first international virtual tour takes place in Florence. Whilst I've been working at Maccabi GB for over 10 years, I am indeed from Florence, and I hope that through this tour, you will all enjoy learning about the incredible Jewish history of my city. I now have the pleasure of introducing our tour guide for today. Giovanna Bossi Rosenfeld is a Florentine licensed tour guide and historian, specialized in tours of Florence from a Jewish perspective. Besides being a close family friend, Giovanna is the Jewish Florence tour guide. She has a degree in architecture, specializing in ancient building restoration, and for many years she has followed her passion in art, history, and culture, guiding thousands through the history of the Jewish community of Florence throughout the ages. As I'm going to hand over to Giovanna, I would remind you that if you have any questions, you can use the chat function, and we aim to ask these questions to Giovanna at the end of the tour. Thank you again for taking part today, and we hope that this will be the first of many successful virtual tours of European cities with Maccabi GB. Thank you and enjoy. Giovanna, over to you. You're muted.
Okay. So, buongiorno to everybody. I'm very grateful to can do this virtual tour with you. And obviously, I guess you all hope to can visit Europe as freely as you want, but we have this difficult moment at the moment, and in this because of the pandemic. But I also think that it's interesting to can do some kind of conference that I'm going to do with you, because history is very complicated, and not always walking on a tour you can appreciate some small details, some even fun little stories. I mean, when I walk in my city, obviously knowing history of architecture so much. It's not only strictly Jewish, but I show you a lot of more things. But with this event, I have the opportunity to show you photographs of the past and document that during a regular tour I can't. So I guess you're going to enjoy. It's a very amazing history of Jewish Florence. Don't expect great numbers, but we had in the past, and we still have, great personality. And obviously, a Renaissance moment was the golden era of the city. And it also was the golden era for everything, art, philosophy, history, whatever you want. And it's important to know that right at the moment of the explosion of Renaissance time, Jews established a consistent number in the city. So I want to tell you everything, showing you images, because I can be boring. Just looking at me can be a little boring. So I prefer to use images, as I do when I do a real tour. So we start with a short video, because you need, I think, you deserve to have a nice view of the city, the beautiful building, the beautiful sights. You will see the major church of Florence, a little too much maybe, but it's important for us. And I will reuse some of the frames that you see now in the video, that you watch in the video, because they are very interesting for Jewish history. So enjoy yourself. Nathan? we fool the eyes. Oh, now I'm going to show you other images. So be patient a second. And sorry, too fast. Eccoci, here we are. You can see, I'm sorry for this, ecco qua, the dome of the Synagogue of Florence, which is really impressive. You see the two main domes of the city in some way. There is another one, the dome of the synagogue is the third highest dome in the city after the one of the, sorry, I use the laser, voila, as the, after this one, this is the dome of the greatest church in Florence, the Duomo. And it was finished in a very interesting year. It was finished in 1436 when the Republican government of Florence started to discuss about giving Jews the chance to be money lender, but not exactly pawnbrokers. Excuse me for my English, but I'm very emotional only. I've done many webinars, but this time is very special. So, pawnbrokers. And is it okay? Okay. Pawnbrokers. So at this, it's amazing because when you look this, when you watch this image, you see in the little yellow circle back there, the dimension of the synagogue that looks a little smaller, but believe me, it's enormous. And you also get an idea of what it means a virtual tours today, because we will walk virtually from the Arno River that it's here, passing through all this area to reach the square where is this big building, the seat of government of Florence since early 1400, when it was finished to be built, and today City Hall. Then you see another building here that it's important in our walk because tell us the very tragic moment of Jewish Florence history. Not everything was flowers, etc. But let me go to this other image because when Florence was founded, it was founded more than 2,000 years ago by the ancient Roman during the Republican time, and then it became an important new city of the imperial time because of an easy way to reach Rome through the river that flows this direction down to the Mediterranean Sea through Pisa, and here the Cassia Way, and the road main road to reach Roma directly on ground. There were two important elements to develop the commerce, etc. In fact, Florence was very important since the very beginning for commerce. But the great boom of the city started much after the fall of the Roman Empire. In 1200, 13th century exactly, was the rebirth of the city. And Jews were here at the Roman time or during the beginning of the golden era of the city. We don't have documents. We know that some Jews was around on 14th century, but nothing, it could be some other contract as the one I'm going to show you, but we don't have enough documents, which is a proof that evidently there were no Jews who really lived here. You have to remember an important thing that I guess you all know. Italy was not for a long time anymore a united nation. So when we talk about Florence and the other main Tuscan city like Siena, Pisa, we are talking about 14th century, 13th century, about city-states with their satellite towns around. And what happened was that the great quantity of money that came through the textile business, the bank business, permitted the city to develop and to become the famous city of Renaissance, the rebirth of classic that we all know and we come to visit from all over the world. I don't come to visit, I live here, I was born here. But it's only at the beginning of 15th century, when the famous family of the Medici, that at the time were bankers and bankers of the Pope, so very important personality, never the wealthiest, but the most important in politics, try to find a good response to the request of the church to stop the Christian pawn shop business. When we talk about Medici and other, sorry, I continue, we have to think about two kind of bank. Banco Grosso, the great bank, and Banco Minore, minor bank. So Medici and other didn't have any interest lending money with a pawn and say, that was the minor bank business that was ruled by the Christians since a long time earlier. No Jews in Florence. Let me talk about Florence and Tuscany. It was prohibited to Jews to be inscribed to artisan guilds, those who ruled the Republican government. And so what these people did, other things, but that was not enough, not interesting enough in a city without a port. So what happened? When the church started to bother more and more to stop that kind of business, Christian to Christian, going back to the Torah, was to brother and sister for Christian culture. So 1437, Jews were invited literally to establish in the city, and they choose to stay in this area. It's a little street. Look at this tower. We are going to see this tower a few times. The street where they started to establish started to be called the Street of the Jews. This is a fantastic painting of late 1800 that reproduces a xylography of late 15th century. And here you can see the same monument you saw in the video. You have Santa Maria Novella Church. If you come by train, the train station, the main train station is called Santa Maria Novella, after the church. You see the Duomo in a totally wrong perspective, believe me, the dome, etc., the bell tower, the baptistry. You see Palazzo Vecchio, the actual city hall, the fantastic seat of government of the city. You see the other building I'm going to talk about. And then Ponte Vecchio. This is the Ponte Vecchio, how it looked like on late 15th century, already having part of the construction that you can see today, but is thanking the fact that still standing. This is Palazzo Pitti, the last grandiose residence of the Medici, not yet Medici property at the time. And the Street of the Jews is right here. The wealthiness of Florence. I talk about textile production, please have a look at these clothes and you can get an idea. It's a beautiful painting in the Accademia, the same museum where the famous David by Michelangelo is housed, and is giving us what kind of life the young, elegant, rich people could do. It's amazing because, as you can note, they are all blonde, and believe me, I saw from much closer than today, you can, okay? Blonde blue eyes. Who of them could have blonde blue eyes in Florence? Very few, because we are darkish, I mean, dark eyes, so not blonde blue eyes. And here you see a very famous painting representing Christian, in this case, pawnbrokers. The Medici. The Medici, it's a classic question, how the Medici were toward the Jews. They were very nice when they needed them. And then they could be less nice when it was convenient. I mean, that's the classic. We had a few of them that really were special, like Cosimo the Elder, the grandfather of Lorenzo de' Medici, the two main you can see here, Cosimo the Elder. And you see there's a wonderful fresco in the Medici Palazzo where you see the procession of the Magi and the young Lorenzo, which is portrayed here. I made it wider. And here is another interesting person, a group. It's a group of people that could be Jewish important people. I show you this other map because I told it's a walking tour. So a walking tour, you need to know where to go. On the right, this is a page of my book that I wrote with a friend of mine and published last year, which is Jewish Florence Illustrated Itinerary. The street, this is a today map. It's normal map you find everywhere. And I mark here the street of the Jews, the name. And we go to walk here. We go to see number 2, this important building for our history. Number 3, it's Piazza della Repubblica today, but in the past is where the ghetto was. Number 5, and number 4, number 5, where Jewish people lived and where other 2 synagogues were in this past, to end at the actual synagogue, the great synagogue that was built on late 19th century. On this side, you have number 1 down. It's the same exactly location that you find on the legend on the right. Number 3, 5, and 7. And it's very interesting. This is a map of late 16th century. The ghetto was established on 1571. So it's visible. And in fact, I will use this image a few times. And it was right here. Now, try to imagine that all this area that I mark with the laser point has been knocked down on late 19th century to make the city modern, like in London, like in Paris, etc. And unfortunately, the ghetto doesn't exist anymore. But let's start from the Street of the Jews. You see again the Ponte Vecchio with the beautiful houses. It was so nice, so beautiful that the Germans decided not to blow up when during World War II, they were coming to north, which is this side, pushed by the, thank you very much, I have to thank you again, the British Army, exactly. And they blew up all other bridges except this one. They did worse in some way, but I should. And now it's the bridge, and we have to walk up to this site here, which is a kind of small terrace facing the river, because it's amazing when you arrive to the bridge from here, and there is a narrow street in front of it. People don't understand what's them. It's this strange slope to walk on. Say, what is it? It's a bridge, believe me. These are what you see today, the jewelry. But originally on this bridge were only butchers. When Medici built this long passageway that you see here to cross all the city from their last residence, which is on the southern side, and reach this way, walking safe inside this path, the seat of the government wanted to be obviously protected. And that's the reason why they built this passageway. Thanking the construction of the passageway, later they decided it was nicer to smell gold than meat. And that's the reason why they oblige all goldsmiths and silversmiths of the city to establish their activity on the bridge that still is the one that you find today. Here is a photo of 2020, and this is a photo of 1945. 1945, you can see what German, instead of blowing up the bridge, they did. They blew up houses at both bridge edges to obviously create a mountain of ruin. And now it's, you see this almost clean, deserted but clean. And our street, the Street of the Jews, unfortunately, was highly damaged. That's the reason why it's difficult to know where exactly the synagogue could have been set up. Here is the tower I mentioned you before, and this it's an enlarged view of this detail. How we think there was a synagogue here? First of all, the name of the street since, let's say, late 15th century started to be called the Street of the Jews. And when I say to be named the Street of the Jews, is because some Jewish people lived there, but definitely there was a common praying room. And that's the reason why many Jews were going up and down. These people were invited by the Republican government of Florence to replace the Christian pawnbroker in the same structure they had. And what they did, they chose this area. Why this area? That is interesting to understand. We are talking about Italian Jews that established here, not Ashkenazi, not Sephardi. Forget that. Roma, since 2,200 years ago, was a very important center for Jews. They still have a very big Jew, I know for you, it's ridiculous to tell you, an enormous community, but was the biggest community in Italy at the time and still is today. These Jews arrived much before the diaspora, so they started business and they had quite an easy life since very beginning. And they obviously had all the problem with the rise up of the church, etc., the Christianism, etc. But it's interesting why I continue to point this, my laser here, because you see 3 arches, and through a letter that a Jewish merchant wrote to his family on late 15th century, we know that he had a minyan in a synagogue, but don't think a synagogue as something really enormous. No, the synagogue was set up in an area we don't even know. And that's the reason why on this street we have a panel, this panel here, as you can see on the top on the left, that remind us that the synagogue was here. And I'm insisting about a synagogue, like a large room probably in the house of the wealthiest Jewish pawnbroker. We know that at the end of the street, this side, was the main pawn shop of the city by the Christians. So probably established there first, and other follow him. Friends, they were a kind of a network of people that knew each other, but they were independent. And this also invited other Jews to establish in the city. How many Jews is hard to tell you, but definitely at the beginning there were 3, then they become 4, 5, 6 for the different, one per district in the city. And obviously they came with their family because they had a good contract for 10 years. It was established they could not ask more than 50% of interest. Christian usually ask 20, 25, 30% of interest, and they were forced to stay in that. And they were only the men that ruled the activity allowed not to wear the over yellowish symbol that they had to put on their jacket. Women and all other were obliged to wear. But did they really do it? I like to show this photograph, not only because, who knows, some of these Jewish people could have been living in this house, in this place, in one of these other that I point with my laser, but who knows? This is an old part. Only this section of the building has been rebuilt after the war. And this huge tower, for sure, have never been lived by Jews. And why I show you? Because of scooter. This is a pedestrian street where it's absolutely prohibited to park anything. But we are in Italy. Welcome to Italy. And I don't think that Italian came from Mars only in the last year. So obviously, even in the past, there was the trend to do everybody what they wanted. And evidently, the Jews who lived here had a good relationship with local people, etc., or whatever you want. most of the time didn't even wear anything special to be recognized. This is the Palazzo Vecchio, how is this called? The seat of government that was expressly built late 13th century up to early 14th century to house the government. So all the decisions theoretically were taken from in this palace by the representative of the main artisan guilds. The Medici were part of the council of the city, but they decided, it was a chess game, they decided everything they wanted. The real golden era for Jews was the period during which Lorenzo il Magnifico, as we call in Italian, Lorenzo dei Medici, was the lord of the city, which is 1469, so on 1492. So his father was still alive, but he stopped to take the role of real conductor of the government, if you want to say, leader of the government, unofficially, obviously. Everything was very unofficial. And Lorenzo, for, as you can see, a long time, was 21 years old. I mean, unbelievably smart young man that was very respected. Oh, he had a lot of enemies, obviously, don't worry, because even the Pope, in a, excuse me, stupid stuff, even the Pope tried with the outrage to eliminate him, but he survived. So it's a long story. And after that, he became a very respectful man, very respected man. You see on the left, here, Lorenzo and his court of artists. And the first on the right is the young Michelangelo. You also have to think that Lorenzo was not at all a good businessman, absolutely zero. He wasted an enormous quantity of money. I mean, supporting something, even buying Hebrew manuscript. His philosopher, especially two philosophers, Pico della Mirandola and Marsilio Ficino, started to study Hebrew even before entering his graces, if you want, because interested to the Kabbalah. Don't think that there were many in all the most modern, let's say, part of Italy, and not only Italy of the time, many philosophers who study Hebrew, and anyway, they were interested to know the Tanakh. It's the most important thing for them was to understand the Kabbalah, etc., but not only to try to think the church, the Christian church, in a different way. That's the reason why few of them were persecuted by the hierarchy of the church, because church dislike totally that secular Christian entered the kind of field. They had only to think what the church wanted. Down, you can see 1464, so a few years before the birth, the Michelangelo. Now, Lorenzo was already a teenager at the time. It's the business contract that was found in the Florence archive. It's amazing because the man, the Jewish man, was Giuseppe da Pesaro. Very interesting. Elia del Medico is the one that you see portrayed. That you saw, I indicate you, portrayed in the fresco. We think it could be him, could be the one behind him, because the age is not exactly coincident with the image. But that was how they were recognizable. The kind of hat they had this kind of hood, etc. But it's amazing to think that Jewish and Christian made many contracts of business, and no problem at the time. Lorenzo has to be remembered also for something very important. This flowering of Jewish business with money that was not obvious at all in our area up to up to early 15th century, started to bother very much the church in some way. Who? The Franciscans, who were great supporter of foundation of public pawn shop with very low interest to pay or almost zero. Obviously, it was impossible to have very low, zero interest or very, very low, but they were much more under control and they were ruled by the government, but not in Florence. And so there was a fight because these preachers were accusing, obviously, all the terrible, worst terrible sin in lending money with interest. They usually was equal Jewish people. As you know, I don't need to tell you anything. And so one of these preachers entered Florence and he wanted to preach against usury and Jews. And Lorenzo told him that he could not. He could preach in the Duomo, but about everything, not that. This man started, and obviously there were a group of young people that were absolutely excited by his screaming against the Jews, and they attacked a pawn shop where a Jewish family was working. I mean, the family was on the upper floor, but the man was down. And people of the area informed the guards, so Christian, defending this group of Jews, and the guards arrived, took the man in the church, and they imprisoned him. And then he was banished out the city. And that is just an example of the open mind of Lorenzo. Lorenzo died in 1492. He had a very flat nose, couldn't smell. It's a very strange detail. But this created a high crisis for Jews because after his death, 1494 and 1527, Jews were banished out of the, not really officially banished out, but not, sorry, I made a little confusion trying to read. I prefer not to read at all. The Medici were banished out for politics because accused to want to become tyrant. Absolutely true, but that's what happened. And that's created a very difficult moment for the Jews. The situation, they were always risking to be banished out, one day yes, one day no. But anyway, in 1530, the Medici were able to back to power, thanking the link, the alliance created by the second Medici Pope and the Emperor Charles V of Habsburg, that, don't forget, was ruling practically all Europe, except England and France. But it was very powerful, the exchange of feeling, because the Medici up to then were linked to the King of France. And they obtained the title of Duke. And Jews started to breathe again. But this is an interesting story, very bad indeed. Right 1 year after the death of Lorenzo de' Medici, can you read? I hope you can read this white slab at the bottom. It's written that with a piece of iron, just to translate quickly, a young Judeo engraved the image, and a mass of furious people lynched him. The story is a little more complicated. After 1492, plenty of Sephardim entered Italy, and many of them entered Florence, but not the wealthy Sephardi that everybody loved. That's meant business money, etc., etc. No, they were even very poor with no way to survive. And so the mood of the citizen was a little more hard toward the Jews. And a young man called Bartolomeo de Casas had a discussion, was a teenager, discussion with a group of Christian boys. And he had a little knife or something, and they accused him to have engraved this image of the Madonna and other images of the Madonna in the city. True, fake, who knows? But when the guard got him, he told that he did it. So something very strange, because normally people don't, you have to wait the torture to hear something from someone accused. Anyway, good for him. when they got him out of after the trial, after the prison, to submit him to a terrible torture, killing him in a terrible way, one hand in one place, one eye in another. Don't let me go over. What happened is the mass of people that was there lynched him, and that was better for him because he died immediately. 1537, in this nice Medici family, the first duke was killed by one of his cousins, a bad cousin. A good cousin who was called Cosimo became duke at 17 without being married, without even expecting that. And he wanted to marry the widow of this first cousin, the first duke. But Charles V told him, no, you have to reinforce the link with Spain. So he married this wonderful girl on the left, who was the daughter of Pedro da Toledo, who was the representative, the ruler, representative of the government of Spain in the area of Naples, non Sicily, but all the area from Naples down to the south. So he married this wonderful girl, and they deeply loved him. They had 11 kids, etc. But the great thing is that this beautiful girl, it's maybe not true that was really educated by Benevenida Abravanel, of the Abravanel family, that in Naples were very, very wealthy, were the wealthiest banker of the city, absolutely non-Marranos. They were Sephardim, rich and well-respected. They were from the family of Isaac Abravanel, that I guess you heard about, who moved after 1492 to Naples. And this link between the Sephardim arrived to Cosimo through his wife. And it definitely was very interesting to have a good relationship with the Sephardim, and I say in general, Levantine Jews. And was a very ambitious man. And in almost 20 years, he conquered almost all Tuscany, most of Tuscany, and Siena, our rival forever. My mother was from Siena, we still discuss about it. And he founded a city that you maybe heard about, Livorno, that became the new port because the commerce needed to improve. And it's amazing what happened. 1555 in Rome was established, I also wrote it well, established in Roma a ghetto. The first ghetto, all right, you say, the first ghetto was in Venice, 1516, but it's another reason why in Venice was a ghetto. The ghetto established in Rome was due to the desire of the church to totally separate Christians from Jews. What happened during those years? It happened, the break between those that became the Protestant and the Catholics. So a great break in the Christian world. And this also explains why a ghetto, because the ghetto making the life of Jews much more miserable, more control, etc., had the purpose in some way to push Jews to convert. And the Pope of the time, when he established the one in Rome, wanted all Catholic rulers to do the same. And Cosimo, no, didn't want, he wasn't interested to do that. And so he asked his lawyer, because he didn't know exactly if he could or could not. And they say, no, you are free, you can do whatever. It's not concerning the Inquisition tribunal that is designed only for Christians. They are non-good Christian. Jews are Jews, they are not, and he didn't. But then by the time the break between Christian, Catholic, and Protestant was clear, made, and Cosimo, step by step, stayed on the side of the Pope. So nothing is proved, but in 1569, he obtained, as is written there, the title of Grand Duke of Tuscany from the Pope in the Sistine Chapel and blah, blah, blah. Casually after 1 year, he established a ghetto either in Florence or in Siena. But the city where business was, Pisa and Livorno, no. They were untouchable, never get to there. And now the ghetto. We are going to now move in this part. The ghetto. He set up the ghetto, not building anything, absolutely. He simply bought, this is a map interesting because the ghetto that you see in yellow here, because the ghetto was made wider later, is exactly, more or less, obviously, this is not a photograph, reproducing the ghetto set up in 1571. How many Jews? That is the question that I guess you will ask me. How many Jews? But he had to do a census about the number of Jews in Florence and all the satellite towns. There were 100 Jews in Florence, more or less, and 450 in the satellite towns. And so what he did, this area that he bought a block in a miserable area. This was not at all an elegant, nice area. During the century, became poorer and poorer. What you see here, this very late 16th century, was the new market for the food. That is a column that I guess I like that you remember because it's still standing exactly on the same side, which is the cross point of north, south, east, west of the ancient Roman castrum. This is an unbelievable document. It's fantastic and unique in Europe. Is a book, as you can see, dating from much later, 1720, and reproducing all the floor, the map, they said, this is the map of the ghetto, how it was at the time. What the Medici did on early 18th century, they had to enlarge because the ghetto was too small. There were at that time more than 700 Jews living in Florence, and lots of them, the wealthiest, Sephardim, that they came from Livorno and other cities, they live out of the ghetto. So it was a scandal in some way. So they made it wider, and we can have floor by floor, room by room, all the, this is a legend that they made it wider, just you can see, that is, it's difficult, it's all in Italian, but it's the staircase A, staircase B, the new square, the old square. Here you see Corte del Macellaro. La Corte del Macellaro that was about here was the quarter where the Schechter, Thomas dice, where the butcher killed the animals. So because they had everything, and they had an enormous well that is marked here and reproduced here. You're going to see in a photo at the center. And how make a ghetto? Did they build a wall around? No way, there was no room. So the Medici rented to the Jews in this lighter color area, the inner part. Only Christian could rent from the Medici the shops at the ground level, and the apartment they had window facing the street and the square. And then there was a break here, but it was easy to create a break and to build up a little wall inside, etc. Jews entered through this, which was the main entrance to the ghetto, and they could use more or less what I indicate you. I will show you better in another map. They lived there. Then later, they could live all over, and they also had the windows, the apartment with the windows facing the street and the square, etc. I show you this small model, which is in the Jewish Museum of the Synagogue in Florence, where you can see how narrow were the spaces. And they entered from the square, passing through a vaulted passageway here and then here. So there were all passageways to can cross in all possible way. Okay, this is another, it's a reconstruction of the ghetto. It could look like on late 19th century, because obviously we had a photograph. Ecco, the main square of the ghetto, just to give you an idea. Sorry, I drink a moment. The main square of the ghetto, how it looked like, when in the late 19th century, the project to knock down all the core of the city center took place. And so all the Jews that owned at the time the ghetto were expropriated. This is a map of the Italian synagogue. There were two synagogues with the Italian minhag, which is a little, still existing in many places in Roma. But it's, for instance, there are two synagogues or more, I think, with the Italian rite. And you see here the wonderful Aron of late 1600, all knocked down. This is a map that I made, and you find in my book, and with the red lines, with the red color, red perimeter, I overlap the volume, the perimeter of the new block built after World War, I'm so sorry. I'm emotionated, I couldn't believe it. On late 19th century and still on. So you see how narrow, this grayish were open passageway, open air. And that was a square. Was absolutely suffocating. And now you see the square has it look like, and so you see on the background, you see the ghetto facade, and here the new palace that corresponds on the surface to half of the ghetto area, whose name is Palazzo Levi, because the family Levi built it on late 19th century. Here is to give you an idea of when we walk in the city. I will show you some of the narrow lane and some of them with a gate. No ghetto, nothing to deal with the ghetto here. Okay. Things, what they could do in the ghetto, I forgot to tell you. They could only sell and buy second-hand stuff. And they were forced to stay in the ghetto, sorry, going back a moment, stay in the ghetto of the sunset. There was a Christian person responsible to open and to close the gate, and they had to pay them. So they set up first a group of Italian Jews and a group of Sephardi, and then they joined all together with a unique rabbi, with a school, etc. Obviously, they did many more things under table, how we say in Italiano. So in real, that was what they could do. And the idea was to make them miserable, but they had to pay the rental. And few of them were fantastic medical doctors. The medical doctor could go up and back how much they wanted if they needed for work, because they were called by the Christian, wealthy Christian, to take care of them also. Then, if you know, there is a story, a very interesting book about Blanes, who was a Sephardi Jews who live in the ghetto and who rent money to the Medici Grand Duke of the time. The Medici extinguished, no kids anymore in the last generation, and thanking God, we can say, they were replaced by the very enlightened government of the Grand Duke Habsburg-Lorraine. And it's the glory moment for Jews that started to have many, many more rights. 17, who are these nice people here? So it's Marie-Thérèse of Austria and her husband. So we are speaking about the Habsburg, and they immediately, since mid of 1750, you can see here, the Jewish community bought the two synagogues of the ghetto, La Italiana e La Spagnola Levantine. So Italiana and Spanish Levantine or Levantine. After 2 years, Jews were permitted to do almost all profession they wanted, almost all. Only lawyer was prohibited. To study law was prohibited because they studied ecclesiastic and civic law, so it was. Then there was the short period of French government, but the Jews already had a lot of equal rights already. During this period, the last quarter of 18th century, something interesting happened. We had this Grand Duke that you see very young that decided to sell the ghetto to the Jews. And in fact, 3 Jewish people bought the ghetto section. They continued to rent to the other. And it's when Jews started to live out of the ghetto. Here is an interesting street. It's very near where the ghetto was. You see the poet Salomone Fiorentino, who lived out of the ghetto and died there. Pegna is a shop still working in Florence, a drugstore, very famous, very high quality, and still existing. It's not ruled anymore by the same Jewish family, but they maintain the name because it's a symbol of quality. The thing changed highly after 1861, when finally, with the unification of Italy, Jews in Tuscany and all over the unification took place, non completely the entire country, they had the total emancipation. And that is the, can say, last golden era for Jews in Florence. You see the King of Italy, Garibaldi, Cesare Rovighi, who was an important Jewish man who was in the army with Giuseppe Garibaldi, and Angelo and Laura Orvieto down, who were the symbol of the great intellectual in Florence that very open mind, etc., became very famous. We all study in Florence, even today, in the book for children written by Laura Orvieto. 1861 to 70, Florence became the capital. At the point in time, the project to knock down all the ancient core of Florence took place. But already at the time, it was decided to buy a lot by the Jewish community of Florence to build a proper synagogue to house the almost 2,000 people. There were 1,700 that couldn't enter anymore in one of the two small of the ghetto. So finally, what they did, they bought the lot here where the synagogue is. But to make happy the most of Jews that live at the city center since generation after generation, I mean, they took off the ghetto that was going to be demolished, the furniture of the 2 old synagogues, and the place in a new building. In a building very near the Duomo, bought by a brotherhood of the community, this building on the left that had, with the 4 windows on the top, facing the street, 1 room, and another twin room facing a courtyard. And here they set up the 2 synagogues. And as you can see on the slab on their side, on the plaque on the side, August 44. What is written here? It was here that on August 44, the Jews of Florence met to thank God for the liberation, because the synagogue was still having dynamite inside. This is the back facade, and this is the Italian synagogue inside. What is curious here is that this building wasn't touched, wasn't damaged by neither the Nazi nor the fascists. And in the Italian synagogue, the one that you see here on the right, the Allied army started to pray in the Ashkenazi minhag. Okay. And still no more, but it was in use until 1962, always for the Ashkenazi Florentine Jews. And after, it was sold to have money to build the modern Jewish school that you see on the right. This is the great synagogue, thanking the donor David Levy and the fantastic architect Marco Treves that you see under him, and other 2 Christians that worked together. It was possible to build a fantastic synagogue. Ecco, that you can see inside. Ecco. Sorry. Ecco. Sorry. This is an enormous synagogue in Oriental style. Oriental style, and to have it a little more original compared the new churches and what else. Excuse me, I have a telephone that doesn't want to stop. And the decoration is unbelievable. But what you see here, you see that there are two typical elements of the new synagogue of the time: an organ and a pulpit. They copied churches, no way. What has been changed in 20 years ago is to have the bima at the center and no more near the aron, how it was in the past. Women have the women gallery as well as a mechitza to can stay down, especially in winter time when it's very cold. This is an unbelievable decor that is only a modern sample to give us an idea that all the wall was decorated with gold details. That is a view on the top, the women gallery. And this is the dark part of the fashion that I made it shorter because I'm very, very late, I'm sorry. And you can see what happened. We had first a moment that brought 1922 Mussolini to government. But at the beginning, absolutely did not have any anti-Semitic ideology. There were Jewish ministers in that government. Then the alliance between fascist and Nazi, and the beginning of the anti-Semitic ideology since 1938. And as you can read, 45,000 Jews almost live in Italy. We have this as a number because of a census of the Jews a few months before the application of the racial law. In Florence, there were about 2,300. And why we had the German? Because first Italy was allied to Germany, but then the allies enter the southern Italy, Sicily, the American, and the British a little northern. And at a point in time, to negotiate the armistice, the king supported a coup d'etat against the government and imprisoned Mussolini. After that, in a very short time, the German army occupied Italy. And they liberated Mussolini, brought him to north, and the country was divided in two areas. Finally, we had 11 months of Nazi occupation because from very south, thanking you and the American, the Nazi were pushed up to north. And here I put two photographs, the fantastic rabbi of Florence of the time, who helped, thanking also the great help of the Archbishop of Florence, helped very much the Jews to find shelter, and really was and in fact, he's honored with a silver medal for civic honor after his death, and he was deported with his wife. The kids survive, because they hide them in Christian families. And this is a Jewish partisan, Eugenio Calosso, just to give you an idea. This is an interesting image. I'm going to finish soon, where you can see the synagogue with the old building that was knocked down in 1962 to create a modern school. Why it's important? Because when it was the first roundup of the Jews in Florence, was November 6th, 1943, there was a Shabbat, and that's the reason why they choose that date. They thought to find a lot of people praying inside, but it was closed. The synagogue was closed since a long time by the intelligent rabbi that was very dangerous, etc. But they found people, because in that building, this low building here, there were foreigner fascists that they were put there to stay, to sleep, etc., in the old Jewish school before finding a shelter, a proper shelter. And they found a number of foreigner Jews, and they kept them, and they all died in the camps of what we know, because we don't know the names of the foreigner, not all the names of them. And here on the top floor, the Shamash family that didn't hide. Very strange with that. And here is the memorial section of the garden with the name of all those that we could find in documents and crossing research between Yad Vashem and the community of Florence, etc. We know that more or less could have been 2,200 Jewish people, not only local, but foreigners. It's difficult because there were people who hid and left the country, who knows. The official number of those that were deported from Florence is 311, and only 15 came back, but we are sure there were many, many more. And down, you see some of the broken column, because a week before the German exploded all the section of the city near the Ponte Vecchio, they enter here in the night and place mines at the bottom of all the dynamics, at the bottom of all the columns. So they wanted to collapse in some way the women gallery. But for some reason, it seems that a person who lived across the street and a man maybe scared for his house, but also someone that wasn't Jewish but grew up with the kids of the community, took some of the mine off, and it was possible to have an explosion but not a collapse. And this is my last image, and you see 1944, a very nice image of this soldier of the Jewish brigades that hold the hands of the group of little kids. Some of them are still alive, but I didn't have time enough to tell you who. And here on the right, the actual school that houses only kindergarten and preschool, because the community today has a little less than 900 people and therefore is shrinking. And we hope it doesn't happen, but the school is still alive. For those of you that are interested, this is my contact, and you can take, and then I'm ready to answer your question.
Giovanna, thank you so much for this amazing presentation. I found it fascinating, and I'm from Florence, so I think this has been absolutely brilliant. So we've removed the pin, lovely. We will put your contacts up again, and we'll send them out to all the participants. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions about the presentation, we've received a few, but if you have any questions, if you want to type them in the chat, or if you want to put your hand up with the Zoom facilities, and you can ask it yourself if you wish. We're only going to have a few minutes for this, but Giovanna, there is a question about Michelangelo's David, and I guess the question was about seeing Michelangelo's David, which there was an image in the first video. I have another image if you want, but I wonder if there's a connection between Jewish life in Florence and Michelangelo's David. Maybe that's, yeah.
Is the meaning of David himself that is very important. Don't forget that for Christian religion, what is the Tanakh is called the Old Testament. So Christians study the Pentateuch, no? The Torah, but also the Kings, and so it's all part of the. After this is the Gospel. So when you take a Bible, a Christian Bible, you have this much of Tanakh and this much of Christian religion history, because obviously much shorter. But a lot of statue representing Jewish prophet, Moses, Abraham. But when a statue like David was chosen to be the defensor of the rights of minor people, minor classes, and obviously in this case you have the defensor of a city against aggressive army or important enemies, but also the symbol of protecting in Florence, protecting the Republic. When you need such a symbol, to get the symbol from mythology, yes, but mythology is mythology for Christian, passed through. The mythology passed completely inside the Christian culture. You don't see, but all the saints are in some way replacing the great people of the mythology, the heroes, and so, but I don't want to enter that too much. When David was chosen since early 15th century as a specific symbol to protect the city. And I'm having huge discussion with your father because I say it's a symbol of protector of the Republic of Florence. So during our Shabbat dinner, oh, no, you don't say, I say, yes, obviously everybody has interpretation, but it's logical because why not before? Florence has always been in risk to be invaded by Siena, by Pisa, supported by Austria or supported by France. Maybe the neighbor kill each other with money by someone else. I mean, so early 15th century, I'm sorry, 14, 15, because I'm used to use centuries, hundreds, because kids better understand when I say hundreds than century. But early 15th century, what happened? The Medici, the famous grandfather of Lorenzo de' Medici, Magnifico, was banished out for 1 year with the accused to want to become a tyrant. Since earlier, we already had 2 David statues depicting him, statues in the round, no more just some painting because of the history of Judaism. No, really the hero. Always depicted as young, with the head of Goliath in one hand, the sword in the other one, and dress, and 15 years old. Then David. David was not at all planned to be displayed there. When Michelangelo had the commission, it should have been displayed at the bottom of the Duomo's dome. So to defend what? For me, is to defend because already at the time, and it was 1501, 1504, there was the great, say, blowing up prodrome of Protestantism. And so the Catholic Pope, let's say the Christian, the Church of Rome wanted to improve its importance. And why all this nudity? In that square, there are so many nudity that I was born like this, I always saw this. But clients, why so many people nude? Obviously, it's a question I ask Jewish people mostly. Chabad, I work a lot with them. Why all this? Because they were the symbol of the past, glorious past of the great Roma. In that time, when the statue was finished, the government of Florence, who paid for the statue, decided not to use to be a symbol of defensor of the church, but to be a symbol of defensor of the city of Florence. And at the same time, being the city of Florence, needing to be defended against the Medici and the new friends they have, also to defend the Republic against the coming back of them. Is non-circumcised because it's just for an eventual next question, because it's a symbol, it's depicted as a classic ancient Greek Roman hero.
Thank you, Giovanna. We have a question about kosher facilities and how many Jews live in Florence today. If I may, I can say that there are about 800 Jews in Florence that live today.
You told me 100 less than I.
Yeah, well, because lots of young people move away from the community, unfortunately. And there are definitely kosher facilities. There are a couple of restaurants. There are kosher supermarkets. There are weekly minyanim. And if any one of you wishes to travel to Florence, now maybe a little bit more complicated, but it is a beautiful, beautiful city to visit. And obviously Giovanna's services are in person a lot better than, not a lot better.
Aspetta.
Just as great.
Rega. you forgot the kosher ice cream. Excuse me, but
Of course,
you
course.
come to
There's also
Italy and you
kosher ice cream.
eat an ice cream. No.
Giovanna, thank you so much for
No other
all your
question.
knowledge.
No other question.
No, there is no other questions at the moment.
Because
I would like to hand over to Ian Ahrens, who is a trustee of Maccabi GB, to conclude this morning's virtual tour. Ian.
Right, thank you, Giovanna, for an interesting and informative virtual tour of Florence, sharing with us all its history and beautiful architecture. And thank you for everybody for joining us this morning, and for those of you who have made donations. And if you haven't and you still wish to donate, there will be a link on the email sent out to you tomorrow morning. Last week, we launched the Yellow Candle Project, ensuring that on the eve of Yom HaShoah on Wednesday, the 7th of April, the community can continue to commemorate and never forget those that perished in the Holocaust. The Yellow Candle Project is a practical and informal educational tool to remember the Jewish Holocaust victims on Yom HaShoah and broaden participants' understanding of the Holocaust in the safe space of their homes. The project aims to distribute yellow candles to as many individuals in the community as possible. Alongside each yellow candle is a card with the name, age, date, and the place of death of someone who perished in the Holocaust, and that will be enclosed with a candle. Again, we will include details in the post-event email. It's also featured in this week's JC and the JC online. Due to the popularity of this morning's event, we are repeating the tour next Sunday. So if you know of anybody who would like to join us, please let them have the information. We hope to continue our virtual Jewish walking tours over the next few months, and we'll keep you informed. Lastly, thank you for joining us, and happy Valentine's Day. Goodbye.
bye-bye. Thank you for your passion. Hi.
Grazie.